meeting of September 17th, 2020. The meeting is being held remotely by Zoom under the orders of the governor that is not allowing any public attendance given building closure considerations due to COVID-19. The public may participate by joining the Zoom meeting as follows, and the sign-on and the login is available. Video recall will be muted upon joining the meeting. If you want to be recognized to be heard, the procedure is that the applicant will present first, the board will then ask questions, and then we will open it up to anybody who is in attendance that would like to speak to the application. Participants are reminded that by joining the meeting, you consent to your likeness and audio being used and all rebroadcast by LCTV. The broadcast can be viewed online at LCTV On Demand. And it is 7:15, so I think we'll start right away with our first hearing. If we have our applicant in the room, can you tell me, Dave?
I'm bringing James Curran in now. James.
So I'll call the case while you're bringing him in. This is case number 949A. The petitioner, James Curran, requests a variance pursuant to section 173.31 for a detached structure at 236 Taylor Street. Is Mr. Curran in?
Yes.
Hi. We'd like you to present your petition before the board. We do it kind of informally, a little more informal because of Zoom here. But we all have a map. I don't know if Janet can screen share it while you're speaking. And why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you're looking for?
All right. Whoops. Did I lose you?
Mr. Curran, we can't hear you. You need to be closer to your speaker or talk more to your speaker.
No.
There. Yay.
My name is Jim Curran. I'm the homeowner at 236 Street.
I can't hear anything.
Mr. Curran, we cannot hear you. Do you have a speaker microphone on your computer?
Apparently, but it's not working properly. I can hold it with my phone.
Huh.
My sound system is turned all the way up.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Curran, I went over to Mr. Curran's property this evening, and talked in person to Mr. Curran about his project. And maybe Mr. Curran would be okay if I speak for him a little? Would that be
Actually, I don't think that we should start that precedent. What I'd like to suggest, I mean, I'll do it as a last resort. What I'd like to suggest, Mr. Curran, do you have a way to call in on a phone, and then we won't be able to see your face, but we will probably get better reception?
Yes.
Actually, this is Dave from LCTV. If he calls in on a phone,
Yeah,
we can merge his phone and his image.
that would be great.
nice?
So
So
do you have a cell phone or a house phone you could call in on, Mr. Curran?
No. And I have a number in your announcement.
He's looking for the phone number, he says.
Dave will give it to you.
I think I have it right here. It's 929-205-6209.
Can
Right,
you hear him, Dave?
So yeah, so here's the phone number. It's 1-929-205-6099.
You may need the meeting number and passcode also.
We'll let Dave take care of it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay,
Sorry
hold
for the
on.
delay.
All right.
Much better. Thank you, sir.
All right.
So going back to the original request, my name is Jim Curran. I'm the homeowner at 236 Taylor Street, which is adjacent to the Sanctuary Medicinals plant at 234 Taylor Street. When Sanctuary Medicinals built out the plant, they added several large structures on the side of the plant which faces my house. So this has moved the footprint of the plant about 25 or 30 feet closer to the property line. The result is that the formerly neutral building now looks quite industrial. For visual mitigation, Sanctuary Medicinals has agreed to pay for an 8-foot fence between their property and mine. We originally expected to put this fence on their property, but the walkthrough showed that the landscape is prohibitively difficult because of the large rocks and the slope. They asked if I would put it on my property, and I find that agreeable and far more feasible than trying to put it on their property. So I am requesting a variance to allow an 8-foot fence for visual mitigation right up next to the property line, because the property is close to my driveway and the setback would put the fence right on the driveway itself. So can I answer any questions about that?
Yes, board members, would you like to ask Mr. Curran any questions?
You're muted, Jillian.
Jillian,
I do have a question.
go ahead.
So when they looked at the fence to install on their property, I do know that it's on a slope, but where the handlers are, there is some space up there. Did they look at,
Wait a second. Wait. The echo is a problem. Hang on just a sec.
Okay.
Okay, let's try again.
sure. When they did the walkthrough, did you walk through with them or did they walk through on their own?
We walked through with them.
Okay. And at the top of their property where the air handlers are, were they not able to install the fence at that level up there?
No, the space between the air handlers and the and our property drops off quite sharply. There's barely enough space to walk before you start to get into a slope. And then what happens after that is there are trees and rocks up to our property line.
Yeah, I did see
Some of the
that.
rocks are quite big.
But there was no space beyond the slope and at the top where it plateaued and the handlers were.
Right.
And that was what they said, or was that what you agreed to as well?
Oh, both of us. Both of us saw it that way. I walked through with David Castro,
Okay.
and I agree that it's just not feasible to put the fence up there.
Okay.
Mr. Curran, what's the noise situation? Are those constantly humming all day long? Is that noisy?
The air handlers on our side are humming, but it's not loud. The loud humming is in the front of the building.
And when you put this fence up, is it designed to have any noise proofing?
No.
So I have one question. I also was out there earlier this week to look at it. And I guess the question, why we don't just instead of putting the fence 1 foot onto your property, why don't you put the fence right on the property line?
Well, there are these very large rocks as you go down towards the end of the property, away from my garage, continuing on the driveway. So the property line goes right up against these rocks, which are almost the size of golf carts. So if we move it back a few inches or a foot, it's just much more feasible to put the fence in.
What type of fence are you proposing?
This is a cedar fence with dog-eared posts. They are actually paying for it.
Yes, I see
We
that.
have it. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Sorry.
are they dog-eared? What kind of posts are they? Are they steel posts?
My understanding is that they are also cedar.
Okay. Who's
What
going
is
to pay
the-
for the maintenance of the fence? Is there any agreement on the maintenance?
I'm assuming that I will maintain it because it's my fence on my property, and they are reimbursing me for the cost.
Okay. I was just wondering because 10 years or so from now, when the posts start to rot out, it could get expensive to maintain it. You might want to put that in their agreement that they provide maintenance to the fence as needed.
Good. That's a very good point, John, but a little beyond the scope of our authority, but I'm glad you raised it.
Oh, I'm not saying we're going to tell them to do it. I'm
No,
telling
I'm
them
just-
we should talk to them about it.
I'm just telling you, I'm not even sure that you should have gone there, but I'm glad you did. Okay. Mr. Curran, what's a dog-eared post and how much higher than the 8 foot will the post be?
Oh, the dog ear just refers to taking a little edge. Whoops. Are we there?
Yes.
Did I lose
Yeah.
you?
No,
Are we
you're
back?
here. Yeah.
Okay. So if you imagine a piece of paper and you hold it upright and clip off two corners, then
Okay.
it's dog-eared.
But that means the post, Mark, I think you're the expert on this one. The post will be higher than the 8 foot panel.
No, he's talking about the fence itself being he's talking about little narrow slats of wood that come up to a little point. We've all seen that kind of privacy fence where the little slats of wood would be how wide, Mr. Curran?
I think they're 4 inches.
Okay, and then at the top, they just have a little point at them. That's a common design. I was fortunate enough when I drove by that Mr. and Mrs. Curran were out, well, Mrs. Curran was outside and got Mr. Curran out to answer my questions because my immediate response was the same as Jillian's. Why the heck aren't they putting it up on their property, which is 3 feet higher anyway, and putting it up there and not blocking the Curran's view of that lovely rock wall and woods there? That was my issue. And Mr. Curran said they tried, they talked about, they'd walked over it, lots of fill, and he wanted to, and he's happy with this design. He's happy with it being on his property. He's just wants it high enough that it can actually block some of the noise and view.
I'm still going to repeat my question to Mark Saucier, please, about the posts supporting this fence. Does that post rise up higher?
Well, without actually seeing the type of post and all, typically they might go up a little bit higher, but I mean, it's no problem I'm not sure how they're secured to the post. Typically on a dark type of fence he's talking about, again, without looking at it, it's probably just 8-foot sections that are nailed to the post. So it's a matter of where they nail the sections as to whether or not the post is going to be above or below the top of the section.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I believe, based on the illustration, this is the stock Home Depot item. I believe that the posts are no more than a couple of inches either higher or lower than the slats.
thank you. That's important when we write our decision, sir. So I want to be sure that we get that in there. And thank you for that explanation. I also see that the finished side of the fence is going to face your property. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I also don't understand one thing on your narrative that said 10-foot or 40-foot, are you abutting an industrial? Yours a residential zone in where your house is, correct?
Yes,
And this property at the sanctuary, they're an industrial zone?
I believe so. They are in the special marijuana overlay.
And so where did you get the 40-foot setback from?
It was just my understanding, reading the codes, that I might need a 40-foot setback, which of course would be prohibitive.
Okay. The other thing I just want to do very briefly is, in order to grant you a variance, before we can even consider granting one, we have to establish that there is a uniqueness to your property, either by location, topography, or some other feature that makes it unique. And then we have to establish that not granting the relief would be a hardship, and that the relief can be granted without substantial detriment or derogation from the zoning bylaw. So you have stated all those things, except I think we need to agree as a board to find that his property has this hardship due and owing to his proximity to this industrial zone generally, and this specific user in particular, and that the topography and features of the lot and the improved features on his lot prevent the fence from being anywhere else. Is everyone agreed with that?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Is there anyone who's signed into this meeting that hasn't been heard from and might like to speak to this application?
Sherry, Building Commissioner Ed Mullen is in the room.
Oh, well, let him speak to the application, of course. Mr. Mullen?
You're muted, Mr. Mullen.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Sir?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to speak to it, but I just got in on the meeting. I wasn't able to hear. So you'd have to start from over. So I'll continue to listen and speak when appropriate.
Well, this is a request by the gentleman, Mr. Curran, at 236 Taylor Street, to have the sanctuary facility construct, or to allow him to construct, but they would pay for an 8-foot fence. So he's looking for a variance from the zoning bylaw to permit an 8-foot fence substantially on or a foot from the property line rather than the typical 10-foot setback. He's established a hardship, and it would be a privacy fence to screen his property from the unsightly features that have been added to the sanctuary building on his side of the property line. And we just want to know that you have no particular objection to that kind of a variance being granted.
I have no particular opinion. I would say that up to, as long as it's not over the property line, would be fine,
Up to, okay.
but not over.
It becomes difficult if a fence is partially on one property and partially on another.
No, he's described a fence that's going to be totally on the current property, Cheryl.
I know.
Can I
Okay.
ask one more question?
Yes,
The roping and erasing the stakes are up there. That was quite long. Is that the entire distance of the fence?
The fence would be, I think, 176 feet.
Okay.
So it is quite long. It extends well back into the woods.
Okay.
Great. Okay, I'll take a motion to close the hearing if no one has any other questions.
I believe we do have a statement from an abutter. I think Janet sent it out earlier today from.
I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary. Please read it to the record for me.
Okay, this is from Bruce and Nancy Morrison. I forget exactly their address. They don't have it on here, but as for the petition case 949A requesting a variance for a detached structure at 236 Taylor Street, Bruce and Nancy Morrison support giving him the variance. They also add the noise and look of sanctuary medicinal is very disturbing. Thank you, Bruce and Nancy.
Yeah, and they, I believe, are across the street. So Mr. Curran described that much of the noise emanates from the front, which would affect the Morrison property more than what you described, Mr. Curran. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe there is one more letter of support, which I included in my packet, from my abutters who also use the same driveway. This would be the Mollenhoffs at 244 Taylor Street.
Okay, I apologize that I don't have that. Mark, do you have that to read in?
No, I'm looking at the original, packet sent out.
I don't have it either.
Oh, if Janet doesn't have it, we don't have it.
I will take judicial notice of the fact that Mr. Curran has described that his neighbors that share the driveway have no objection to this petition. Okay, now I'd like a motion to close the hearing.
Sherry, who's voting on this one?
No, we're going to close the meeting. I motion that we close the meeting.
I'll
Wait,
second.
she's right, we shouldn't close till we have the right number of voting members. Don't I have
You have
one,
five.
2, 3,
Oh,
4,
you have
5? We have 5, Jillian.
Yep.
Okay, so now take the motion to close. Who will second that?
I will.
All right, I'm sorry, you have to identify yourself.
Rod Stewart, second.
And who moved to close?
John Sewell.
And then all those in favor of closing? And you have to go one at a time, so I'll say Cheryl,
Cheryl Callie Hollinger in favor.
Rod,
Rod Stewart, yes.
John,
John Sewell, yes.
Mark Saucier,
Mark Saucier, yes.
and Cheryl Gould, yes. Board want to deliberate or discuss? How about hearing from the alternates? John Field, you want to start?
Well, I heard the key words to me for variance would be slope and topography. Those are clearly the arena that we can grant the variance. My concern would be that the noise and the look of the abutting property be properly screened, and it sounds like the fence is something that would address that.
Okay, and Eli?
I agree. Looks like both parties worked well together to come to a solution, and it looks like the right way to go with it.
Good, thank you. Jillian?
Although I do believe he's bringing everything that he needs to get a yes, I have real concern about this being the right fit for the Currents. As far as where their houses are located, the height of their houses compared to where these air handlers are, and where the fence is actually going to cover and what it's not going to cover. And I know that you touched on it, Sherry, but I have real concern about who's responsible for the fence. Long-term, 100-foot fence. I do believe there might be other options for the Currens to get what they're looking for, whether it's greenery, whether it's painting of all that would help block all of that. I have real concern about this fence particularly, but I wouldn't deny that this is really what they wanted.
Very interesting comment. Very interesting comment. Mr. Curran, would you like to speak to that?
Well, yes. I think that the biggest challenge really is the topography. In the air handler, which is from my front door, the rightmost one, it's close toward the edge of the building, we have seen erosion in the slope near that air handler, and we've talked to folks at Sanctuary Medicinals about that. It is my belief that there is simply not enough space between the air handlers, I think they're air handlers, and our property to landscape or to put a fence in or to do visual mitigation. In the beginning, that was our wish, but as we walked the property and we looked at the slope and we looked at the land and the trees and the rock, I've come to believe that there really is not a practical way to put a fence on the sanctuary medicinal side of those very large rocks. The rocks are anywhere between the size of a golf cart and a large landscape rock. And they are, some of them are in a wall and some of them are solo, but they're quite large and would take a crane to move them. So it makes it, to my mind, prohibitively difficult to put a fence there.
Mr. Curran and board, I just want to comment that, or maybe Ed, Mr. Mullen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I keep thinking that there is a setback between a commercial property and a residential in the zoning bylaw that is greater than the typical setback between properties. And I'm confused about why air handlers were permitted on that side of the property of Sanctuary, so close to Mr. Curran. Isn't there like a 40 or a 50-foot setback to residential properties from the commercial district?
I don't have the bylaw in front of me currently. But having been on the planning board when the special permit was granted, I remember that there was relief at that time through the special permit process with the planning board.
For those handlers, though, because I'm getting the sense from Mr. Curran that the handlers kind of just appeared and weren't part of the initial design. Am I wrong about that, Mr. Curran?
I was not aware that there would be handlers. I think they were part of the original design because I've seen design documents. There are more of them. I think there are 6 handlers now. I think there originally were shown as 3, but they're all at the same distance from the property line as the original drawings that I saw.
The same distance as the original drawings? Because I'm getting the sense from John Sewell's comment about who's going to maintain it long term, and from from Jillian Shaw's comment that she's concerned that you're not adequately being provided for by what is considered to be a successful and financially able entity, and they don't feel like you're getting enough from the negotiation. So that's not our business before this board, and that's certainly your business. And this board has in front of it a request for a variance for a height variance on a fence and a setback variance on this fence, and that's what we'll act on tonight. But I think you should take some of these concerns of our board back to your bargaining table and think about that, or perhaps find a spokesperson for yourself for those issues, because I think they're well-intentioned comments.
Mr. Curran, there's a lot of shade there where you want to put your fence, but even in shade, there are tall things that will grow, such as arborvitaes. I mean, the concerns Jillian expressed are the same ones I had when I was talking to you, that you know, would be nice if there was some kind of noise abatement for your fence, to the back side. There'd be so nice if there was some kind of arborvitaes. Arborvitaes grow very big. I think we should I agree with Sherry that we should grant your wall and give you whatever you want, basically, regarding that, because you are you lived there before that facility was built, and it's too bad that it's causing you difficulty.
Would that go back to the planning board? Or would that go back to the host community agreement?
Well, what Mr. Mullen said is the planning board gave the special permit. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this building was already in existence, and they had to come for a site plan approval, special permit. I don't know if it was an aquifer and a water resource or whatever, but when you have a change of use and any parking is changed, that has to go before the planning board. So Mr. Mullen said it went before the planning board. And I believe Mr. Curran just confirmed that the setback for those air handlers, at least the distance was approved, if not as many handlers, but that setback distance was approved in the site plan review. Is that what I'm hearing, Ed?
That is correct.
Yeah,
And was there
So-
any discussion as far as any kind of coverage or screening?
probably not.
There probably was, but you're asking me to remember something that occurred several years ago.
Perhaps those minutes could be dug out and looked at. And, but I'd like to make a motion in the meantime. I'd like to make a motion that we grant Mr. Curran's,
Before you do, I just have one minor comment.
Please.
When Mr. Curran mentioned they were Home Depot fences, I pulled the webpage up and I saw 3 different fences. One had a post about equal to the top. 2 others looked like they were about 4 and 6 inches above. So I think we need to cover an additional height for the posts as well.
Thank you.
thank you, Rod. So I would make a motion to approve of his, wait a minute, let me find
I'm gonna grant a variance in your motion.
I'm sorry, Grant, I'm trying to
Grant a
read,
variance.
I'm trying to read the case number on my computer.
Yeah, your case number is 949A.
Yep. I'd like to make a motion that we grant the request for a variance to allow for a fence to be up to 8.5 feet with a post, according to the request and as written in ZBA case number 94A for 236 Taylor Street.
And the lot line setback.
Oh, to be right up to on the line, within 0 inches of the line, as far as I'm concerned, and to be up. Well, I already said the height. Right?
Yeah.
Anything you need to say?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
fine.
and to allow the cosmetically present site to be facing his property. That facing.
No, that's not something we have jurisdiction over, but he put that in his presentation.
He did to put it there, because you normally with fences, they're required to have the pretty side out.
Yeah, when you
Not-
put a fence up on your property, the pretty side has to be towards your neighbor. So
That
in this
is
case,
part
we're
of
doing
our
it the other way around.
It's not a requirement under the zoning bylaw that we're enforcing.
Okay.
Can we
Well,
add that that we approve that as a subset or something?
I want to put it in the motion, just so he has it, even if it's not a requirement. So there we go. Did you manage to make heads or tails out of that, Janet? You want me to repeat it?
No, I have it. I'll be writing it. I have it.
Pretty side, is that what we're gonna use?
No, I'm gonna say finish side facing the applicant. Finish side facing 236. Okay,
Someone has to
I
say,
have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Mark Saucier.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor, let me do a roll call vote. Cheryl,
Cheryl Kelly, Hollinger, aye.
Rod,
Rod Stewart, yes.
John Sewell,
John Sewell, yes.
Mark Saucier,
Mark Saucier, yes.
Sherry Gould, yes. So, Mr. Kern, you're granted the variance for that fence. Good luck with it.
Thank you very much. What is the next step? Do I need documentation of this decision?
Well, the building inspector, any abutter has 21 days to appeal the decision. And I don't know, are you waiting 21 days for the granting of the permit, Ed?
Yeah, I'll have to wait 21 days in case there's an appeal, and then we can issue the building permit.
Yeah.
The building
So you
permit
could-
is required, it's over 7 feet, so.
You could apply for the building permit now, and you'll just have to wait for the 21 days to have it issue. And that means it's 21 days from when the decision gets written. So I will work on writing that as fast as Janet can nag me for it.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank
Thank
you,
you for
Mr.
joining
Curran.
us.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Ed, that's our only hearing if you want to sign off.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Gonna review minutes.
Well, I wanted to make a comment that we cannot review executive minutes except by going into an executive session.
There we go.
And I would like, maybe the better way to do the executive minutes is to have anybody with comments redline it back to Janet and only Janet, not to one another. And then for the next meeting, we'll issue it with the red line comments, Janet, and then we can have an executive session to discuss and approve those minutes, all right?
That sounds fine.
Okay.
Janet, I had a couple. Can I just give you a call?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
On the minutes on the August 20th meeting, I had an awful lot of changes to that, so I'd like to request that we postpone acting on that until I've had a chance to redline and resubmit that around, if you don't mind. It was a complicated backstory, Janet, and while your notes are accurate from the very short meeting that we had, culminating in its appeal granting, I think the backstory should be in one place. So I just wanted to incorporate the backstory and then let the board decide if I said it accurately. Okay.
Okay.
That's on that Chuck Bell decision that we ended up with. Now, I did have a couple of other things. There were minutes that I did modify and send back around, and that would be on the complicated decision on Air Road. So has anybody had a chance to review those? That would be April's meeting, I think.
May 21st.
May 21st. That was in your packet this time around.
It was?
Or-
No,
It was sent around about,
I sent it a day later. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wait a minute, I can find it.
has anyone had a chance to review it? Because it's lengthy and complicated as well. If you haven't reviewed it, I'd like you to before we approve them or not.
Could we look at them and do it next week? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not something we can do sitting here right now. It's like 6 pages or 5 pages.
Okay.
Everybody agree to that?
Those.
Okay.
Now, also, I've been trying to think of ways to incorporate more participation into these meetings. And I thought, at the very least, I think I'm going to ask the secretary to read the agenda and call the meeting to order, at the very least. Other boards sometimes assign cases in rotating order to one member to sort of take the lead on the case. And we could do that if you wanted to in the future, but let's start with trying this, having the secretary call the cases and read them off and introduce them. And then the chair will open the hearing, but at least I'm not reading everything and you keep getting bored with my gravelly voice. I also think that if there's letters submitted, we should take turns reading those letters. I know, Cheryl, you like to read them, but I'd like everybody to sort of participate in that. Janet and I talked about,
Whoa. I hate reading them.
oh, I always call
I'm
on you to read them.
dyslexic. You just ask me if I read them. I always on the spot, and I sit there and and stumble through them. It's horrible.
I thought it was
Can alternates read them?
I thought it was your favorite thing to do.
No, you always elbow me and tell me to read it.
Yes, the alternates can read them. I do want more participation. Thank you.
I don't always know where I can and can't say things.
Yes, alternates are always allowed to say things. You just can't vote unless you're appointed to vote on that matter. And you can't say things if you've recused yourself, of course. But yes, alternates are allowed, encouraged, and that's why we have you. I personally, and I've said this every time we have disagreements, I've said it. The wonderful thing about having 9 of us with 9 different opinions is that we all get to weigh in and we get to establish our positions. So I like that. I also would like some of you to start writing decisions. There's a good template and we can pass those around and share that. If someone wants to volunteer for this one and can do it in a day or two, it's a relatively easy one. I'm happy to send you the template for it. I've got a good template now for introducing it as a Zoom meeting and what has to happen. And alternates can do that too, Jillian. So anybody interested in taking this on, or do you want to take a breath? This is fair warning, and I will assign them next week if I don't see any hands go up.
Can I ask you a question? Is it possible to see the decisions once they're written? I mean, I know they're on their website, but just so that we can, see the discussion and then see how it's written?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The one the one thing that we have avoided as long as I've been on this board is actually having input to the draft decision. And if you felt that we wanted to change that, we could consider doing that. But I think that having the input to the minutes solves that problem. Because the decision typically just says, these are the things we deliberated and then we granted or didn't grant or whatever. Whereas the minutes really talk about the back and forth and the abutters' concerns, and the minutes are more detailed, Jillian. Typically, when you look at the registry records of a decision of a board, you almost can't tell what they did in the background. It really just, and it shouldn't be detailed because you want the examiner of the title to be able to get right to whether or not that was granted and what it was granted for, and not see the whole backstory. So I'm pretty adamant about that just because I don't want to muck up the registry records. In
I
fact,
guess I was more like, I would love to see when it's written, what it looks like within close proximity of the meeting. So we saw how it works.
no problem. That'll have to go through Janet. I just did a title, by the way, I just did a title where there was a special permit granted to industrial property on Foster Street in like 1967. And poor Diane, I had to send her to the vault to find the old file because it was too old to be anywhere archived electronically. And the decision only said a special permit was granted. I had no idea what it was granted for and whether it was still in effect. So
I want to make sure that I'm understanding what Jillian's asking for. So as soon as Sherry gives me the decision, I put it on the website immediately. That's as soon as I have it. So I don't have it to give it to you sooner. Are you asking that I send you a Word copy as opposed to looking at it on the website?
Yeah, if that's at all possible. I mean, I know I can go to the website, but I know if it comes over an email, I'm going to open up the email and actually read it so that I can see from meeting and our discussions to what it looks like in the actual written decision.
Janet, it would be really nice for continuity, as far as I'm concerned, if that was part of our package. And if you want us to be involved in these decisions, if we start reading them all the time, we're all going to feel more comfortable writing them.
Exactly.
So
that's a good point. So let me just get it straight, because poor Janet is usually skidding in on two wheels as I fly by the window and throw a decision through the window within a minute to spare to get it to the clerk's office. So what I want to get straight is, do you, Jillian, want to know the minute it's in her hands, or are you content to see it before the next meeting as part of the minutes?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a real good idea, Cheryl. Yeah. Janet, are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to handle it, and everybody can see what happened.
And then maybe we'll put the last couple decisions in the next packet as well.
Yeah.
That's also fine. Rod, I'm going to ask that only one meeting back, because I don't want to interfere with anything in the litigation right now, if you're okay with that.
Okay. Certainly didn't mean a 9-year road.
Yeah, I don't want to go back that far. It's available on the web. I just don't.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
I don't want to complicate things while the litigation's still outstanding. Okay.
Yes, and you can certainly print those too if you want to go back and look at ones that are similar. When I'm writing the legal notices, I go back and look at similar cases. You can print,
Yeah, oh, sure, of course.
writing a decision. You can look for another similar variance or special permit.
Anyway, I will say that I'm really liking this board a lot. There are more of you going to the site more often than has been my experience in the past, and you all come with great questions and great concerns, and I think you were all very paternalistic toward the applicant tonight, so I appreciate it. And
Didn't you want to just take care of him? I really want to just take care of him.
I know, what a nice man.
Nice man.
It was difficult to see because he set back so far, but it was eye-opening to see the Google Earth picture.
Yeah,
That big building so close.
Oh,
Well,
I
you know,
Dave.
and I feel for the guy because that building was there,
okay,
but none
we're
of that
still
extra
on,
equipment on
we're
the
still on-
outside was there. And so he had just a blank building that was, 20 feet, equipment and stuff were 20 feet or so further away than they are now.
Yeah,
Now
we're
all of a
still on
sudden
the
he's got this
record,
ugly
so we
equipment
can't,
sitting out there making noise.
I'm sorry, but we closed the hearing. We're still on the record, so I can't,
Okay.
you can't speak to the details of that application without everyone in the room that was on it. But I just wanted to thank you all for caring so much. I mean, all of your input is very, very important. I was going to say one other thing before I took a motion to close, and that was to thank Dave very much for helping this gentleman with the technology so that he could present his case himself.
Yay.
Do you
Good job.
think that maybe in future meetings, we should have people who are going to do a presentation, come on at 7 and work
No.
with LCTV to make sure everything works?
So
No,
I
That
give,
was fine. Where were we all going? Nobody's in such a rush. We were fine.
Oh, I know, I'm just
Yeah.
a long commute home,
I do offer to do, I offer to have practice time
Okay.
with anybody during the weeks ahead of time. I'm already working with the folks who are on the October agenda. So they've already been offered time to do practice Zoom meetings with me.
Okay, just so you know, I met with James also. I think it was, must have been Wednesday afternoon. I went out to look at his at thing because looking at the little drawing and even Google Earth, you don't get the feeling till you actually walk down his driveway and look and go, oh. And so he came out and talked to me and help orientate me so I knew what I was looking at.
Yeah, I
And
just
then he
didn't
asked me
feel
to
comfortable driving down his driveway.
I didn't. I walked down it.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
But he asked me about, he said, well, how do I get on Zoom? He had no idea.
Right.
And I told him it was on the website. And I said, well, you know what? I've got a copy of the agenda. I'll email it to you. And I did. So that's why he was.
Yeah, I
he's
did
going to
send
find it.
it to him. I did send it to him and then we talked again.
So I just make sure that, because when I talked to him on Wednesday, he was confused and wasn't sure how he was going to log on.
Yeah, it's a little unnerving if you're not technologically savvy and you don't do it for a living.
It's probably the
Trust me,
first
I
time he's
know.
been on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Rod.
I've been doing it for almost 6 months now.
Rod, I always assume that if someone is petitioning the board for something, that they're delighted to have us see it. And so I drove right down the driveway and sure enough, every time I've ever gone to a site and there's been someone there, they have been so glad to see me and so glad to know that there are people who actually care and actually interested and actually paying attention.
I think the same way. They're asking for something from us. Therefore, they should be willing to let us come see and get a better view versus trying to do it from a sketch or it's just,
yeah,
it's different, I suppose, if someone's building something that doesn't exist yet, but when
Yeah,
it's already
that's a good
there, and
point.
you want to go look at it, it's,
it's a good point, but most properties, you can see it easily from the street. You don't have
Yeah,
to
not
go
this
on, not this one.
but it was
Okay,
nice. You got
okay.
back there, it was well marked out. You could see where the property line was. You could see where they wanted to put the fence. So it was, even if you didn't have him there to help you out, you could figure out what was going on.
Okay, who wants to go home?
I wanted there.
I'll take a motion.
I'll move, we adjourn.
Second.
I'll second that motion. Mark Strasser.
You guys are going to become Pete and repeat, All those in favor, Cheryl,
Cheryl Callie Hollinger in favor.
Rod,
Rod Stewart, yes.
John Sewell,
John Sewell, yes.
Mark Saucier,
Mark Strasser, yes.
and Sherry Gould, yes.